Good day, you bored human. Today, we're going to do a different thing. We're going to build a diorama with a toy. We're going to build the Penguin from Batman. Penguin, the underrated villain from Gotham. I do like this character. And yes, this is my collection of Danny DeVito's Penguin. That freak of nature devilish version of the Penguin. There's something about this character that brings me fear as a child. The grotesque grin, the filthy greenish black saliva, combined with those small sharp teeth, the way he speaks, the way he walks, the way he ate that raw trout fish, everything. However, we're not going to use his version. Instead, we will use Colin Farrell's Penguin from DC Multiverse of the toy line McFarlane Toys. But first, let me tell you how did I got here in the first place. My wife asked me to, Hey, wait, no. I said wait, stop. I said stop. My wife asked me to buy some stuff. While on the mall, I saw this toy store, got carried away, then forgot what she told me to do. Anyways, after fighting with my wife for forgetting what she ordered me to buy, here's the figure. It was on sale and costs about $7. For a McFarlane toy that sits at around 7 inches, that's a very good deal, worth the fight. I opened the box to check the figure for defects and flaws, and take time to appreciate how awesome this figure. He feels heavy for his size, so I weigh him to check how heavy this toy was. I will admit, the build of this figure was impressive, and to be honest, I am thinking of keeping him rather than destroying. But the problem was, well, let me tell you, the reason I agreed to follow my wife's order to go to the mall and buy her stuff, supposed to, was that she will buy me a resin in return. But since I didn't got what she told me to, I might not be able to buy a resin for the whole month, and the next month, and the month after, and the month after the month next month. I might not be able to buy a resin till the end of this year. Where do I get money to buy a resin? I don't have a job, I'm a bum. What am I going to do? Sell my organs to have cash? So even if I wanted to keep this figure, I have no choice but to use it. Poor little penguin. Anyway, let's get back. The figure also comes with a base and a trading card, with Penguin posed like a boss trying to intimidate you. The base, however, well, I might disregard it and will print a bigger base. The figure also has this rubber or vinyl parts. I am not sure whether to retain it or disregard them. If it was vinyl, I might consider leaving and use it, but if that's rubber, I don't want them. Rubber parts on toys do expand and deteriorate over time, and I don't want a statue with a sticky rubber a few years later. And as you can see, I decided to remove them. And man, what's this mess that I get in? I remember when I was young, my mother used to call me a wreckanic, a mechanic that only knows how to wreck, since I only know how to destroy and annihilate things. And as I watch how I dismembered this toy, I might agree with my mother. Seeing a good figure disfigured wasn't enjoyable. But from this moment on, there's no turning back. I trimmed down the neck to make it shorter. I felt that the figure was a bit skinny, so I work on how to make it look a little bit heavier and bulky. I added filler on those parts that will make him look bigger by putting cotton, then apply super glue. I also put a molding putty on his pants that was previously rubber. And since I discarded the suit he is wearing, I replaced it with a 3D printed skirt, just to have those waves and curves for the coat I'm about to do. This required me to do minor sculpting on the upper parts of the jacket. Well, I don't actually know how to sculpt. But since I already started this mess, I have no choice but to exhaust any ability, skills, power, potion, or spell that's been hiding for a long time. Now, it's time for the head. I started by removing the paint on the head with thinner. However, this doesn't work as I am expecting it to be. So I decided to soak it with the paint thinner, then leave it for an hour. After removing the paint on his head, I cleaned the figure, then apply primer and leave it overnight. I moved on by applying the base coat. Then apply my usual mixture of flesh white and oak brown. For the skin tone, then seal it with a flat top coat. I then do the wash with the usual blue, yellow, and red wash to balance off the tone of the skin. I painted the scars on the penguin's face with a contrast paint to give it a hint before applying the final layer of his skin tone. And as for this is the most difficult part of this process. Painting the eye with the small scale of this model. This might be the hardest thing to work with that I ever encountered. Though, winning an argument with my wife might be the toughest. But painting the eye with this size deserves a credit. After carefully painted the escalera, I move on to painting his iris. And as I thought that painting the escalera was hard enough, this came in waving like a final boss from a game. I then added white paint to cover those teeth. I used white and not the usual ivory, for I'll apply a red wash tinted down with water, just to penetrate on those crevices. For a small scale like this, you need to find an alternative from your usual way of painting that may or may not work if you do so. After working on the eye and face, I will finish the head by applying black paint. And by using a fine tip brush, I will make a thin line on those area of the hair that lacks on volume. Usually, I will finish painting the whole figure first, set it aside, then work with the base. But since I will build the base from nothing, I decided to work on the base first. I looked online to find a proper base that will fit a mob boss like penguin, and found a base that resembles an alley. But since the figure stands at 7 inches, finding a medium to small size base wasn't easy. So I cut the base in half, then worked on to adding stuff just so it doesn't feel boring. I was thinking of adding a signage for the base, so I make a signage from an STL file of a box that I got online, then added text and a silhouette of a handguns and a mountain flipped upside down to look like an iceberg as a logo of the underground club that Penguin managed, the Iceberg Lounge. I placed the silhouettes offset to the box to help them stand out to the rest of the sign. This will also help me for what will I do later. I will then print this on a clear resin so that when I added a light, it will look like a real signage. Also, the real reason was I only have a clear resin. The last bottle that I am saving because I don't know when will I ever be able to buy another resin for printing 3D figures. I also printed an umbrella for him just to add accessories. I then spray the signage with primer to block off the light, then carefully removed the primer with lacquer thinner on parts where I wanted to lighten up. Remember why I placed the text offset with the box? To make this process easier. I will apply black paint, then repeat the process of removing the paint on areas you wanted the light to illuminate.
By the way,
Iceberg Lounge plays a special role on most of the Batman franchise. When there's an Iceberg Lounge, there's Penguin. In most versions, the Iceberg Lounge was a club or nightclub that functions as an underworld hub for criminals and villains of Batman. Run and managed by the Penguin, it serves as a front legitimate business for the Penguin's illegal activities. It is his territory. However, Tim Burton's Batman doesn't have the Iceberg Lounge, Instead, Oswald Cobblepot resides in an abandoned Arctic world exhibit in the Gotham Zoo and leads the Red Triangle Circus Gang. And yes, that's where I got the name of this channel. I then assembled the base and placed the figure the way I wanted it to be, while planning on how will I put the signage. I will then add light on this signage using this. Yes, a cheap battery-operated Christmas light. Using it will save me time on doing circuit and buying battery holder. After spending an hour thinking on how will I put this battery holder to the base, I decided to put it in the lower back. In that way, I can dig a hole on the side of the base to access the switch. I drill a hole on the upper part of the wall for the contact point of the signage and access for the wire when I hide it. After hiding the wires to the wall, I connect the signage, then check if my mother was still right about me being a Reckonik. I guess I'm not a Reckonik anymore. I am now a Rechnician.
Yeah, boy.
Anyway, I painted the base with primer, then spray black paint. I will start to paint the concrete parts with stone gray. I do like the details of this base. See, a small figure do look a bit boring when displayed, unless you pair them with other toys or present them in group. So if you're thinking of displaying a solo figure, might as well flaunt it with a diorama. And a diorama with a good amount of details attracts a lot of people. I cover the wall with red paint to emulate brick walls, then added yellow and brown on some of the spots, because that's how a brick wall should look like, right? I will then spray a dark contrast paint of bone claw to the cracks and crevices of the concrete. I will also tint down the brick wall with it and add water to reduce the potency of the paint to achieve a dark and gothic feel. I will then add a weathering pigments for the ground to make it look dirty. I used a contrast medium for this instead of glue. Glue will take time to dry, though I'm not sure if contrast medium will do the job, but since it is sticky, I am assuming that this thing will work. I will spray black paint all over the figure, then move on to paint the inner garment and tie with purple. I will come back to paint the tie with the previously purple paint mixed with dark blue to establish color separation on the inner garments. I came back for the base to add weathering on some areas like the metallic parts. I use a rust-colored paint and spread it along the corners, edge, and parts where there should be a buildup of rust. And to cover up the blunt surface of the back, I decided to put up a spoiler. And when I say spoiler, I mean this spoiler. A brief synopsis of the series, The Penguin, just to cover the huge area instead of painting it with black. Grabbed a picture of Oz, then a quick search online about the synopsis, printed it on a sticker paper. I then sprayed a clear acrylic just to protect the color of the print.